I want to tell you about a French chemist named Michel-Eugene Chabrot. And it's 1832. Napoleon is dead. The guillotine is still a recent memory. And this man, working out of a Paris laboratory with none of the technology we take for granted, pulls a previously unknown compound out of raw meat and names it after the Greek word for flesh, Kreas. He called it creatine. And right now, in your gym bag, there's probably a tub of this shit. But anyway, I'm JD, pharmacist with 30 plus years in healthcare. And today, I want to take you on a quick journey through the surprisingly fascinating history of the supplement that went from a 19th century laboratory to the most researched sports nutrition compound on the planet. And then, just recently, turned out to be doing something nobody expected. Something that has nothing to do with your bench press. So stay with me. This one earns its runtime. So Chevreul discovers creatine in 1832. Interesting finding. Scientists file it away. And about 15 years later, a German scientist named Justus von Liebig, confirms the discovery and starts pushing further. And he notices that wild foxes, the ones that are canines, have 10 times more creatine in their muscles than domesticated foxes. 10 times. And his conclusion? Physical activity increases creatine levels in muscle tissue. And this is the 1840s. No pre-workout, no BCAAs, no protein shakes with 17 grams of added sugar. Just a German scientist, some foxes, and a theory that turned out to be correct. And yes, probably that big, smart brain scientists get all the foxes, I guess. But anyway, the scientific community spent the next several decades quietly fascinated by creatine, but it stayed mostly in academic circles. Then in 1927, two researchers at Harvard, Fisk and Chevreul, made the discovery that changed everything. They identified phosphocreatine, the stored form of creatine that your muscles use to rapidly regenerate ATP during explosive, high-intensity work. They showed that phosphocreatine drops during muscle contractions and rebuilds during rest. That was the mechanism. That was the key. But still, creatine did not cross over into athletic culture. Not yet. But fast forward to 1992, Barcelona Olympics. British sprinter Linford Christie wins gold in the 100 meters. His teammate, Sally Gunnell, wins the 400-meter hurdles. And shortly after, it comes out that both athletes had been using creatine, working with sports scientist Roger Harris, who had spent years studying exactly this compound. And suddenly, every coach, every trainer, every strength athlete on the planet wanted to know what was in that bottle. By 1993, Greenhalgh and Harris published a landmark study confirming that creatine supplementation increases intramuscular phosphocreatine stores. The sports science community had its proof. The supplement industry had its next billion-dollar product. And the gym bros, God bless them, had a new identity. By the mid-90s, you couldn't walk into a weight room without seeing a bucket-sized tub of creatine monohydrate on someone's locker shelf. It became the first supplement that actually had serious peer-reviewed science behind it, which made it both legitimate and enormously overhyped at the same time. And here's the irony. The people who most needed creatine were not the 23-year-olds loading it before chest day. They were the 40, 50, and 60-year-olds who had never heard of it. Because here's what took another 2 decades to fully emerge from the research. Creatine is not just a muscle compound. It is a brain compound. And the brain story, the one being actively written right now, is arguably more important than anything that happened in Barcelona. Your brain burns approximately 20% of every calorie you consume daily. It is the most metabolically demanding organ in your body, running on a molecule called ATP, the way your car runs on gas. And your brain has its own creatine supply system, a transporter at the blood-brain barrier called SLC6A8, and 2 internal enzymes that synthesize creatine on site. And under normal circumstances, that system is adequate. Under the circumstances of being a functioning adult in 2026 with chronic stress, fragmented sleep, decision fatigue, 12 hours of screen time, it is not. And when cognitive demand spikes, your neurons draw down their phosphocreatine reserves, the emergency fuel tank, faster than they can refill. And what does that feel like? Mental fog by 2 in the afternoon. word retrieval that takes a beat too long, and sitting in a meeting and realizing you have retained nothing for the past 45 minutes. Not dramatic enough to send you to the neurologist, but obvious enough you know something is off. The 2024 study published in Scientific Reports used phosphorus MRS brain imaging, direct brain scanning, and found that creatine supplementation helped sustain phosphocreatine and ATP levels in sleep-deprived subjects and actually stabilized brain pH. That is not a supplement company press release. That is hard biochemical data from inside the living human brain. And a 2026 narrative review in the Journal of Nutritional Physiology confirmed that creatine supplementation can raise brain creatine content by roughly 3 to 10%. A 2022 meta-analysis in Nutrition Reviews found meaningful improvements in memory in older adults, with the strongest effects in participants aged 66 to 76. And a subsequent statistical critique raised questions about the broader findings, but the older adult subgroup results held up through reanalysis. And the signal is real for the people who need it most. And here's where it stops being just a performance conversation and starts being a protection conversation. Researchers are actively investigating whether chronic, low-grade brain energy deficits contribute to the metabolic environment that precedes cognitive decline. That science is still developing, and I want to be clear about that. But the mechanistic rationale is real and compelling, and maintaining adequate brain phosphocreatine is not a fringe idea. It is grounded in how brain energy metabolism actually works. It's 2026, and creatine still has an image problem. Mention it to most people, and they picture a 22-year-old who can't walk past a mirror without flexing. And that association has been so dominant that the people who would benefit most, men and women over 40, like me, with demanding cognitive lives, have never once considered it for brain health. And that needs to change. And Chevreul isolated creatine from meat in 1832. The scientists spent a century figuring out what it did in muscle. And we are now, right now, in real time, figuring out what it does in the brain. And if you are over 40, you are living through the most important chapter of this story. So what does the current science support? 3 to 5 grams of creatine monohydrate daily. No dramatic loading phase required for brain benefits. What matters is consistency over time. The brain uptake is slower and more variable than muscle uptake. You are not going to feel it in day 3. You're going to feel it around week 5 or 6, and you are going to wonder why you waited so damn long. And if you eat little to no red meat, or if you follow a vegetarian or vegan diet, and I'll try not to say that without making a nasty face, but you will feel this more than almost anyone. Your dietary creatine is essentially zero, which means your brain's internal synthesis system has been carrying the entire load by itself. Supplementation closes that gap faster than it does for anyone else. Think of it this way. You already train your body so it doesn't fail you at 60. This is investing in your brain so it doesn't fail you at 65. Same logic, same commitment, one additional scoop. Here's what I want to tell you, and I'm going to keep it brief because it's not fully out yet. We've been working on something at NuLifeSpan that starts with creatine monohydrate and builds from there. A formulation targeted at brain energy, cognitive endurance, and the kind of long game neuroprotection the research is pointing toward. Not a pre-workout, not a protein shake, something purpose-built for the person who understands that the brain is an organ worth protecting first. It is almost ready, and if you want to be first in line when it drops, head over to newcreatine.com, which I'll leave that link down in the description below as well. Get on the list for a free sample month supply. Now, of course, these statements have not been evaluated by the good old FDA, but every single ingredient will have peer-reviewed research behind it. That is non-negotiable for really anything with our name on it. In 1832, a French chemist isolated a compound from meat and had no idea what he had found. 15 years later, a German scientist ran it through foxes and figured out that activity changed it. In 1927, 2 Harvard researchers discovered the stored form that powers your muscles and your brain. And in 1992, British Olympians used it to win gold and accidentally introduced it to every weight room on earth. And today, neuroscientists are imaging living human brains and watching what it does to the cells responsible for your memory, your focus, and your long-term cognitive health. 200 years from discovery to brain health application. Not bad for something you can buy for $20. Drop a comment right now. Did you know creatine had this kind of history? And are you taking it? And are you taking it for your brain or just for your body? I read every single one. Hit subscribe for evidence-based content every week for people over 40 who want to stay strong, sharp, and ahead of the curve. And share this with someone who still thinks creatine is just for 22-year-olds who skip leg day. This is JD from NuLifeSpan. 200 years of science, one compound, and your brain is the reason it matters now. And I'll see you in the next one.